What is up, guys? Back here with another YouTube video, and in case you cannot tell by the title below, this video will be a video where I share my story time, my experience meeting the Briscoe brothers, Mark and Jay. I noticed the other day that I never shared my experience meeting them, and I figured since today was the 1-year anniversary of Jay Briscoe no longer physically being here with us, why not share the story about time that I met both of them a couple of times over. But yeah, I met Mark. I'm actually going to show you the photo of the first time I met Mark before I forget to do so. First time I met Mark, I did not get anything signed. It was just pretty much the photo that you've seen, and it was at Global Wars 2015, May 15 of that year, the first of two New Japan Ring of Honor shows in Toronto. And I was only going to go to night one because that was the internet pay-per-view and whatnot. And how the Ted Reeve Community Arena, which is the venue where I met all of the times I met the Briscoes, it's a community arena, and like the floor kind of deal is a hockey rink kind of deal. To the left, where one goalie would be, if you know what a hockey rink looks like, is like to the left it's the meet and greet, and to the right is where the stage, like the ramp and stuff is. And I was sitting second row near the ramp kind of deal, so I had to walk around pretty much like 80% of the floor, like the hockey rink, to get to my seats. And when it was about 15-20 minutes before the pre-show, that's when I walked over to my seat. And when I did so, I seen an independent wrestler that I was familiar with at that time, so I wanted to go over, say hey, like we talked a little bit here and there kind of deal. And I seen that he was with Mark Briscoe, so I walked up, I acknowledged Mark, talked to Tomar, the indie wrestler, for a little bit, like the three of us. And I asked Mark, it's like, oh Mark, do you mind like a quick photo? You don't have to if you don't want to, kind of deal. And he's like, yeah, sure, kind of deal. Took the photo, talked for another probably about a minute, then he had to leave for X, Y, and Z reasoning. And then the wrestler and I talked for another like 2 minutes kind of deal, went our separate ways, enjoyed the show. So I didn't really talk directly to Mark Briscoe kind of deal. It was myself, Mark, and the wrestler. Like I said, did not get anything signed, just that photo. And it didn't hit me till after. It's like, oh man, I could have got like the selfie was on my iPod Touch at that time, because I didn't want to waste the phone battery that I had at that time. And I'm like, oh, I had Marker, could have got him to sign the back of it, kind of deal. But yeah, that was my experience meeting Mark Briscoe. First thing that I got signed, only thing that I have signed in my collection by both of them right now, is this 8x10 from the main event of Global Wars Night 1 in 2015. They signed it right there. Jay Briscoe on the left, Mark Briscoe on the right. The only thing that I got signed just by Jay is this 2015 poster, again from Global Wars. He signed it right there, pretty much over top of himself and whatnot, and definitely bittersweet to have this in my collection. Then you fast forward to May 11, 2016, all of these are Ring of Honor New Japan co-produced shows. This one, like I said, May 11, 2016, it was a TV taping for ROH and whatnot, featuring New Japan. And I got to the venue, it was a Wednesday, it was a decent day out kind of deal, or decent enough kind of deal. And I got to the venue about 3 o'clock. For a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to avoid the Toronto traffic because I lived a couple of hours north of Toronto. Two, I wanted to meet as many wrestlers as possible. My number one guy was Dalton Castle, but anybody else would have been cool to meet. And first ones that I met, not long after I got there, probably about 3:15, give or take. Again, 10-15 minutes at least after, but not too much more. I seen the Briscoes getting their gear out of the either car or SUV or truck or their motorized vehicle, kind of deal. And Jay and I made eye contact, and we were probably like 20 feet away from each other, kind of deal. And I'm like, oh shoot, that's Jay. He's probably with Mark, kind of deal. And when Jay, I don't know for sure if we made eye contact, but he looked my direction. I was like the only one around, and he gave me a nod. And I was wearing a Kevin Owens fight Steen fight shirt. So him and eventually Mark came walking up, and I was stumbling over my words like there was no tomorrow, because Briscoe's like being able to meet both of them at the same time for free. Didn't think that it would happen. And whatnot. So Jay was the one that walked over to myself. I asked him, like, I had the 8x10 that I showed you earlier already out, kind of deal, and I'll get to the poster in a moment, kind of deal. I asked him, hey, do you mind signing this 8x10? You don't have to if you don't want to. And he's like, yeah, sure, not a problem. He signed it. Mark wasn't too far behind, like 5-10 steps. And once Jay was done signing, he gave the marker to Mark, permanent marker, and they signed it. And when Jay was signing the autograph, or the 8x10, he said, was this match like here, like last year or the year before? And I'm like, yeah, it was last year, here about a year ago, kind of deal, and it was super fun to watch it live. And he's like, oh yeah, right on, I kind of remember that match. And I'm like, oh shoot, like he kind of remembered, that's cool. And Mark asked, oh, like, are you from around here? And I'm like, no, I live a couple of hours north, and I wanted to avoid the traffic and hopefully meet some wrestlers. And they're like, oh, thank you for coming out, like making that drive, and whatnot. And I'm like, thank you for stopping. It means a lot for them, like for you guys, like them, to stop and sign it, kind of deal. And whatnot, they left, and it didn't hit me till a couple of minutes after. Like, man, I should have got a photo of both of them together, kind of deal. Even if it's a selfie, kind of deal, it still would have been something, kind of deal. And that's one of my bigger regrets, being a wrestling fan, kind of deal and whatnot. But yeah, so that's the story about the 8x10. The poster was Global Wars 2015. Now, mind you, I met them in 2016, and I only got Jay Briscoe to sign it because a little bit of a context kind of deal. Met them together about, let's say, 3:15, about 4:30, 4:45. It's myself and a couple of other people, like 3-4 other people. We're similar idea, avoid the traffic, get there earlier. They had nothing else to do. They're from the GTA, kind of deal, and meet some wrestlers to boot, kind of deal. Jay Briscoe comes walking out. One of them, I wasn't going to bug him because I met him earlier, but one of the other people obviously didn't because I was the only one there earlier. And they asked, hey Jay, do you mind a quick photo? And he's like, I gotta take this call, or I gotta call somebody, but after, if you guys are still here, then I will, kind of deal. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, nothing against Jay Briscoe at the time, but he was one of those guys, like, if he took the call and then found another way into the venue, I wouldn't necessarily blame him, kind of deal. And that's what I was kind of expecting. But no, about like 4:50, a little bit before 5, he came walking back, and he asked, like, hey, were you the ones that wanted the photos like a little bit ago? And they were like, yeah, we do. And then they hurried to get their stuff ready, like phones, autographs, and whatnot. And I already had the poster out, kind of deal. So I'm like, hey man, do you mind signing this for me, kind of deal, and whatnot. You don't have to if you don't want to. And he kind of gave me a weird look, like, hey, like, what? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then I told him, like, hey, thanks for signing the 8x10 earlier, when you didn't have to. I appreciate that. And he's like, no problem, kind of deal. And by that time, everybody else got their stuff ready, got them signed, took the photos, and I'm like, hey Jay, like, once they're done, the other people were done, do you mind a quick photo? Again, you don't have to if you don't want to. And he's like, yeah, sure. I was wondering why you didn't ask for one earlier. And then I told him, like, I was born blonde and I had a blonde moment, and he kind of chuckled about that. And then we thanked him, he thanked us for coming out, and then Yeah, I definitely regret not getting a photo with both of the Briscoes earlier, especially now, kind of deal, and whatnot. But yeah, that was the two times I met Jay Briscoe and the second time I met Mark. And fast forward a couple of years to 2018 when I met them again. And like I said, it was fast forward a couple of years, I think it's May 7th, 2018. It was the first Sunday of May. Again, ROH, New Japan, Ted Reeve Arena in Toronto. And this time I got there about 4 4:30, like doors open at 5:30 kind of deal. So I figured that likelihood of me meeting any wrestlers slim to none. And whatnot. And when I'd seen a couple of, like, I think one or two other wrestling fans. So I went to chilling outside the venue, and I went to kind of chit chat with them for a little bit. And as I was walking towards them, out of the corner of my eye, I seen Jay Briscoe talking to his phone like a video chat. So I'm like, oh, video chat, people, he has a family back home kind of deal. Don't want to bug him kind of deal. Once he was done, not long after, kind of deal. Let's say if I got there 4:15, 4:25, 4:30, he was done, and he went to kind of walk back in the building, and one of the other people, the other person I was hanging out with, then asked, hey Jay, do you mind a quick photo? You don't have to if you don't want to. And he's like, yeah, sure. Took the photo, and then I asked him that too, like, hey, quick photo, again, don't have to if you don't want to. And he's like, yeah, sure. Took it, and then he gave off that, I don't know if this makes sense, but that vibe of like, hey, I don't mind stopping, chit-chatting for a bit. I didn't get anything signed because I wasn't thinking kind of deal. And I told him, like, hey man, I met you here a couple of years ago. You signed a couple of stuff for myself, and was super friendly, like super approachable, and I just wanted to thank you for that, because I was a 22 at that time, 22-year-old nobody that that you didn't know, never met before, and you were super approachable when you didn't have to be, and I just wanted to thank you for that. And he's like, not a problem, man. Thank you for coming out. Shook hands, and he walked inside. And that was the third time I met him, last time I met him, and I'm just thankful that I was able to meet him. And then that was before the show. After the show, like, you can tell that it's dark out when I met Mark. But it was after the show. I was waiting on some family to pick me up from the venue and whatnot, and met a couple of wrestlers. The lighting isn't that great because it's dark out, and my flash, like if you take a selfie kind of deal and the flash on it isn't the best photo quality kind of deal. So stood near the light and for Mark, and a couple of other people, I think one or two other people asked him for a photo, and he's like, yeah, sure, kind of deal. Like, what you see of Mark Briscoe, you kind of get to a certain extent. And then I asked him, hey man, do you mind a quick photo? You don't have to if you don't want to. Took the photo, and then I told him the same thing about Jay. Like, hey, I met you here a couple of years ago, and thanks for being so approachable and whatnot, super friendly, when you could have been a butthole kind of deal about it. Whatnot, and he's like, oh, I'm not I did not say butthole, but that's like the PG version, and he's like, oh, I'm not a butthole, or at least I try not to be kind of deal. Thank you for coming out then, thank you for coming out now, kind of deal. I hope you got, like, everybody he was talking to at this point, I hope you guys had a great time at the show and get home safe, kind of deal. And that was, like, I think he might have been the last wrestler I met that day, and just a good way to end it off. So yeah, those were my experiences meeting Mark and Jay Briscoe a couple of times, over 3 times a piece, and whatnot. But yeah, that is it for this one. If you have ever met either Briscoe brothers, Mark or Jay, would love to know what your experience was like down in the comments below. While you are down there, feel free to hit the like, subscribe, turn on post notification. Of course, you don't have to if you don't want to, but it would mean a lot to myself if you did. More importantly, hope you guys are doing okay mentally, emotionally, and physically.
The world that we tend to make up is nothing but a fantasy until you wake up. I feel like I'm just lying to myself, yeah. Cause I just crossed the line like I'm playing offside. I do it how I want and I'ma do it till I die. Feel like I'm just lying to myself, but it's